think I'm turning into a vampire. I'm looking for anyone who can help me. Either with changing that, or with finding the bitch who turned me into this thing. A few weeks ago, I went to the bar looking for booze. I had a terrible day. My boss threw a bunch of books and made me cry. The bread I intended to use as a part of my lunchtime sandwich was moldy and greenish. To top it all off, I found out that my ex started dating a new girl. It's not a good way of coping, I know. And I knew, deep down, that it was unsafe for me to go out to bars outside of a group, but truth be told, I didn't really care. I wanted to get fucked up, and I wanted to do it alone. I wanted to be a mess where nobody knew me. Is that such a crime? Betty, I told myself, tonight is not a night for sexiness. And it wasn't. I went out of my way to make sure that wasn't the case. I wasn't looking for a hookup. I was looking to get trashed and then go back home. What happened with Maribel was a complete accident. I was wearing a t-shirt and jeans that were both 2 sizes too big, preserved from back before my ex urged me to lose so much weight. I didn't brush my hair before going out either. I'm an emotional drinker, so by the time I was on my 4th drink, I was openly weeping. What was left of my mascara was running down my face. Unfortunately, it was also getting into my mouth. I didn't try to do anything more than wiping it away with greasy fists before sipping on a pint of beer I knew I wouldn't be able to finish. I don't know how or why she came up to me, but she did. Maybe it was that I looked vulnerable. Whatever it was, she started talking to me. Maribel was sitting right next to me, listening to me mumble about my ex, nursing her own fruity-looking drink. Maribel. That was her name. Or at least, she told me that was her name. I'm beginning to doubt that was the case at all. She also told me that she was fucked up over an ex too. That something happened between them and she wasn't sure how to feel about that. Maribel told me all sorts of things while we were in a cab riding toward her apartment. Maribel was tall, with nearly perfect red lipstick that lingered on her straw but not on her spotless white teeth. She wore this tight little dark red dress that hugged every curve on her body, and her long blonde hair hung in ringlets, tightly coiled, that fell to her shoulders. She wore a black sun hat and sunglasses with amber lenses, even indoors, even at night. She was distinguished, polished, and pristine. Her house certainly wasn't. Most of the night I got there is a black blur I can't quite remember. There was a massive blood stain on one couch cushion, like someone had gotten their period there and had forgotten to clean it up. There was a well-loved collection of Paul Blart and Mormon cinema DVDs stacked by the television. There were other things, like mismatched throw pillows and threadbare blankets. None of it seemed to match the way Maribel had presented herself to me back at the bar. I was worried about it for a moment, like maybe this was her ex's place and she had some weird ulterior motive for bringing me here. And then I wasn't. Overcome by a mixture of heartbreak, grief, alcohol, and lust, I planted a weird, sloppy kiss between her eye and her cheek, then trailed down to her mouth. My hands were on hers, and her were on me, and, well, we don't need to get into that. Truth be told, I don't even remember most of it. When I woke up the next morning, naked and wrapped in sheets that weren't mine, on a hard mattress in a broken metal bed frame, I felt off, sick, hungover maybe, but also it was like something was wrong with me, but I didn't know what it was just yet. My head was simultaneously pounding and overwhelmingly light. It took me a while to piece together what had happened the night before, and when I finally did, I was filled with a bitter kind of regret and a weird kind of hunger. Maribel left me a note explaining that she had work to do and that she didn't want to leave me, but had to. She also wrote that there was a breakfast sandwich I can have in the fridge and a glass of water and some meds on the bedside table. It was a Sunday, and I didn't have much to do, so I did what I had to in order to get home, and I spent the rest of the day in bed, nursing whatever weird hangover I had. The thing was, I wasn't really able to get up the next day either. I ended up sleeping in my bathtub because of everything that was happening to me. It was a myriad of vomiting, diarrhea, constant chills, and crying. I'll spare you the exact details. No matter how much water I drank, I felt like I would never be satiated again. By day 3, I was able to stand, however shakily. I lifted myself out of the mildew-stricken space between the toilet and the tub and braced myself on the porcelain, counterless sink. I looked at myself in the mirror. I barely recognized the woman I saw across from me. I was pale. My hair was thinner than it had been before, closer to my nana's than my sister's. My pupils were huge, like I was high. That might have explained the reason why my warm yellow ceiling tit light was so goddamn bright, even though I only had one bulb in it. The part that stood out most, though, was the bite. It was huge and ghastly. The bite was surrounded by a yellow and purple bruise. 2 long, deep holes about an inch apart of my neck. I wasn't sure what it was, if it was infected, or if I should bandage it. I was only sure of two things. One, Maribel had done this. There was no doubt about it, this was her fault. I didn't have this before going back to her place, and now I did. Two, I was starving and thirsty like I hadn't eaten in days. I hadn't, of course, not really. Everything I got down was quickly reintroduced to porcelain or linoleum. Every part of the brat diet was there, caked, dried, and probably impossible to clean up in its flakes of bile. But the thirst, that didn't make sense to me. I had water when I was in the shower. I would drink it in trembling, cupped hands. It wasn't like I was in a desert. I shouldn't have been so dehydrated. I convinced myself that it was a problem with my electrolytes. I knew I had half a white Gatorade or Powerade or something in the door of my fridge, plus about 1,000 bottles of spring water. I steadied myself on the wall and made my way to the plastic countertops of my tiny little shoebox of a kitchen space. When I opened my fridge, though, it wasn't the sports drink I reached for. There was a styrofoam container of meat in a brown plastic bag on the bottom shelf, and I had completely forgotten it was there until I opened the door and the smell hit me. It was on the train to Rockville, but that wasn't the smell that piqued my interest. It was more like the meat itself, or maybe all the juices in it were calling to me. That was what I would reach for. The meat. Every bite of rancid beef roast digested and thrilled me. I knew it had gone bad long ago, but I couldn't stop myself from eating every last bit, drinking in every last drop from the styrofoam and the plastic shrink wrap in my fingers, and even the plastic bag the roast had been in. When it was all done and the packaging was licked clean, I was disgusted. I was disgusted with myself above all else. Here I was, a grown-ass woman, sitting on the warm tiles of my kitchen floor with my foot holding open the fridge like a door jamb, devouring old meat like a starved tiger in an exotic zoo, trying to block out the sunlight that was stinging my skin and the incessant sound of the swamp cooler buzzing. I went to the kitchen sink and tried to Ralph it all up, but I couldn't. It wouldn't come out of me. And the worst part was, I wasn't hungry anymore. I was satisfied. I didn't feel nearly as sick as I had just 4 minutes prior. This kept happening. I went back to work on Tuesday. The work day was uneventful. I work at an elementary school as a librarian, so Most of my day is reading to kindergartners and checking out piles of books to precocious fourth graders. I got a sunburn on the way to and from my car. Nobody asked me many questions. They just wished me well and hoped I was feeling better. I went to the grocery store that night to get some milk, eggs, cheese, and cleaning supplies. I was out of all of them, and I was planning on tackling the bile on the bathroom floor and the side of the toilet. Things were supposed to get back to normal. I was supposed to find pleasure in quarts of mint ice cream with chocolate ribbons, and the promise of English muffins with pads of margarine melting gently, and in stupid pop songs and announcements over the intercom. I didn't though. Over and over again. Over the course of the next week, I found myself going to the grocery store with every intention of getting normal food. Over and over again, I found myself standing in front of the meat display, filling my basket with all sorts of ground beef, round steaks, anything and everything that still had blood in it. It was like I was possessed. I piled them high in the green plastic basket, and before I knew what I was doing, I was already done at the self-checkout, having spent my entire paycheck on the stuff. I told myself I would cook it, but I didn't. I never did. Over and over again, I found myself in my car, or my doorway, or just inside the kitchen, having eaten every last muscle fiber and drunken every last drop of inhuman blood. I would come to several minutes later and try to make myself puke it all up, but I couldn't. Then there was the roadkill thing. Someone hit a skunk out on one of the back roads I used to bypass the freeway on my way to work. It was fresh. The maggots hadn't even set in yet. The yellow lights of this small street out of town illuminated it like a shadowy figure, like a snack cake in a commercial I saw once when I was younger. I was salivating to the point where drool was spilling out of my lips. I couldn't stop myself. I pulled over, and before I was aware of what I was doing, I was on my hands and knees, devouring. It was something analogous to my very own blowfly girl moment. Only I felt infinitely more shame than she ever did. I couldn't stop myself, not even when the fur caught in my teeth. That was when I knew, while driving back to my home and taking in the skunk scent from all over my body, that something was deeply, horribly wrong with me. I wanted to think it was some sort of compulsion, like Pika. I had heard of people eating clay, chalk, rubber, dirt, their own skin. Anything and everything was an option. Was it so far off to think that maybe my compulsive eating of raw meat was something like that? It didn't feel like a compulsion. That was where I couldn't fool myself. It felt more like I was losing control of myself every time it happened. And that maybe I would never be able to regain that again. The wound on my neck wasn't getting any better either. I bandaged it like I had always taught myself to. But nothing ever really changed. It was just as ghastly, if a little less bruised. But I was coping. I was coping pretty well with it, in my opinion. I was fine with this little secret of mine for a time. It was shameful, but I was living with it. I was getting through it. It didn't stop there, though. There was the meat and the roadkill, the sudden hate for pasta sauce and the garlic and herb margarine spread in my fridge, and increasingly complicated feelings about churches. These were things I could cope with. These were things I could work around. I started keeping rubber gloves and cans of air freshener in my car to distract myself so I wouldn't go after roadkill again. I started ordering my groceries instead of going into the store. When I started to get weak, shaky, and physically ill, I ignored it. When I started puking up every meal I had minutes after eating it, I kept that shit a secret. I tried my best. I considered going to the doctor, but chickened out every time. I dealt with what was happening to me in whatever ways I could. I can't keep doing that anymore. See, I work at an elementary school. I'm the librarian, but I frequently fill in for the teachers during recess when I don't have a storytime circle to lead. Long story short, I was supervising recess at the time. The kids were playing werewolf tag, a game where they pretended to be werewolves while chasing each other around on the blacktop. There was an entire set of rules and politics that I didn't quite get, and that don't quite matter here and now. What does matter is that Jordan Wozniak pushed little Andre Altman when he was trying to tag him, and as a result, Andre skinned his knee. Bright red blood welled up in the little cuts and abrasions, threatening to spill over like the tears in his eyes. I did what I was supposed to do. Took him to the nurse to get him bandaged up. Brought him back out to the bus loop when he said he felt better. But I swear to God, that was the hardest thing I had ever done. I wanted to literally tear into him. I wanted to rip him apart. I wanted to put my mouth on his knee and drink his blood like he was a Capri Sun. It was like there was an animal inside of me that was trying to claw its way out of my throat. And I'm disgusted. I hate myself for that. I have never once wanted to hurt a child, and I'm not about to start. I think I have to quit my job to keep it that way. I'm fine with doing that. I'll do anything to protect those kids. I can't lose control of myself, not in a place like an elementary school. About an hour later, I was sitting in the library while one group of kids went back to their classroom, waiting for the next group of kids to come in to check out books. That was when it clicked for me. I had enough time alone to think about what was going on, and that was when I realized there was something wrong with me. More than the roadkill and the raw meat, it all started with Maribel. She must have bitten me that night. She must have turned me into what she already was. That leaves me with one giant realization. Glaring, unignorable. I am turning into a vampire. Even now, as I type this, I can feel the teeth in my mouth and the hunger growing inside me. I know that my heart isn't beating. I know that my stomach isn't digesting any of the normal food I've been eating. I don't know what to do. I think I might drive out to Home Depot this weekend and get some steaks from the garden center. Maybe a gun will do the trick. Or maybe I can reverse this. That last option seems unlikely. I think I'm already too far gone. Either way, I can't go on like this. If anyone has any advice, I would appreciate it. If not, then I'm going to have to take that trip this upcoming Friday. Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to another video. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you next time.